Hey everyone, welcome to my all-in-one resource for learning blockchain technology. This is going to be your go-to resource for learning the foundation of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and a few other cryptocurrency networks. So originally these were posted as individual videos on my YouTube channel, but this is just putting them all together for easier watching for those of you who want that feature. There was originally an ad in these videos. I did my best to cut those out, but you may hear a few references to the sponsor. So if you enjoy the content, please be sure to subscribe. In general, we post news content on this channel every day at 10 a.m. Eastern time, so be sure to hit the notification bell so you see when that happens. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you sometime in the next video. Hey everybody, welcome. It's Caleb. In this series, we're going to be talking about blockchain, how it's related to cryptocurrency, why it's important, should you care, should you not care? All these questions everybody's been having about this topic, we're going to answer it in this playlist. Now, when you first get started with this, it can be pretty confusing. So I encourage you to stick with it, and if you follow this playlist through to the end, you will have a very, very good foundation of blockchain and cryptocurrency. Now, this is a quickly changing industry, so what we're going to be focusing on is the core. What can we learn that is going to make learning any of these new cryptocurrencies or any of these new blockchains a lot easier? You know, each new cryptocurrency might be temporary, but these principles are eternal. And really, if you've seen some of my other content, you know, I did some database design, and really blockchain is just a form of a distributed database. So it's really not anything that crazy new. There's just a lot of concepts you have to wrap your brain around. But who is more qualified to teach databases than your boy, the one and only Caleb? Okay, I'm not the only Caleb, but how many of you guys named Caleb teach databases online? Yeah, that's what I thought. Now, I know some of you are going to watch this video like, ugh, I'm really into this blockchain thing, but this cryptocurrency stuff just gets on my nerves. And this is pretty common for some technical people. They don't really want to get into the cryptocurrency part of it. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the cryptocurrency actually makes the blockchain network possible. It protects the blockchain. And that'll be easier to understand as we get deeper into the subject. And when you go that route, you can also figure out how to use blockchain for more software projects as opposed to financial projects. But I think you'll quickly realize that these two topics are closely connected. So don't throw out cryptocurrency, embrace that, and then you'll understand blockchain. And let me tell you, there's no better way to understand cryptocurrency than to get started with it yourself. So now let's talk about what a blockchain is. Now, to best understand what a blockchain is, we should understand why a blockchain is. What attributes of a blockchain make it something you might want to try? You know, some people just want to throw blockchain at every single problem. That's not always the case. You know, oh, you need a distributed system? Blockchain. You need to accept money? Here, just invent this blockchain and have your own cryptocurrency. Oh, you have a flat tire? Blockchain. Yeah, sometimes blockchain will work, but there's some very specific pieces of blockchain, and if these are important to you, then that's when you want to go the blockchain route. So the very first thing is decentralized. And this is very similar, but slightly different to distributed. And we're talking about a very general blockchain, but you know, there's not just one blockchain. There's numerous blockchains, and each one might be slightly different. But this is what most of them are going to have. So the first thing, decentralized. This refers more to ownership. So this is not owned by one particular company, one particular person, or entity. Distributed refers to location. It's not to one specific location, rather it's distributed to numerous nodes or computers across the world. So at one point you may have thought of these to be the same thing, but I think it's more appropriate to think of distributed as location and then decentralized as ownership. So those are the first two things. If these things are valuable, then using a blockchain or, you know, possibly creating your own blockchain might be a good solution. Let's just say distributed is the only thing you care about. You know, you want a company, you want to have some software, but you don't want it all in one data center. Well, you don't necessarily need a blockchain because distributed databases already exist. So blockchain is very focused on the decentralized aspect. We don't want one thing to own this blockchain because then that one thing has complete control over everything. If you're using an online service, say Google or, Apple, well, they own all of the servers. They control it. Some people don't want to trust that. So in a way, blockchain is all about removing trust from entities. Everything is going to be moved over to code. And we can trust that code then because you can actually see the rules and all of the nodes in this distributed network follow these rules. So those are the first two things, but then there's three more I have for you, and they're all going to start with P. So you can just remember DDPPP or DDPPP. Yeah, that's how I remember it. All right, so the next one is permissionless. So permissionless refers to the ability to join this network. So the most common example of cryptocurrency, the thing that started blockchain, Bitcoin, nobody's stopping you from just turning your computer on and turning it into a full node to be part of that Bitcoin network and support the Bitcoin blockchain. This is certainly different than with a centralized system. Imagine just calling up Apple and being like, hey, I kind of want to use my computer to store some of your guys' information, like customer data. Do you guys care? They're going to be like, what? No, this is our stuff. But with a blockchain, you can add that node to the network without any restrictions. Next thing, public. So all of the data, the transactions on the blockchain are public. We're going to get into transactions a little bit because this is really foundational to blockchain, but just stick with me for a minute. You can go to websites and you can see every single thing that happens on this blockchain. You don't always know who is doing it though. And that's because everybody has a pseudonym. So a pseudonym is like if someone writes a book, they don't use their own name, but they make up a name. That's a pseudonym. It's like an alias. And this is not quite anonymous because it's possible to associate that fake name with the person's real name. Well, it's a very similar setup in blockchain. Instead of having everybody's name or something that identifies them personally, there's going to be addresses. And these addresses don't say immediately who it is, but it's not exactly anonymous either because it is possible with enough looking around to figure out what addresses are associated with what entities or what people, what businesses, and so forth. So again, it's public, but everybody's going to have a pseudonym, so it's not very easy to figure out who is who. And last thing is it's permanent. Everything gets added to this blockchain in increments known as blocks. And once a block is added to the blockchain, it's always a part of that blockchain. It's basically a permanent history. Now, I've talked a little bit about transactions. What exactly do I mean by that? Well, blockchain, and if we look at a specific example of Bitcoin, it's designed to be a distributed ledger, which again is a history of transactions. So now we have all these attributes describing a bunch of transactions. So we can see every transaction of money to all these different entities. Again, we don't necessarily know who it's going to, but everything is public and all those transactions are permanent. You can go and see all of them on a blockchain explorer, for example. All this stuff was invented to solve a really important problem. And I'm going to describe this by drawing probably the most beautiful picture you've ever seen. All right, that's me. And I want to give you money. So here is a dollar bill, and it has numbers. And this is you over here. And you're really happy because you're making a ton of money from this transaction. This is an example of a peer-to-peer transaction. So this money goes from my hand to your hand. And then if I want to get that money back, you have to give that money back to me. So in a way, it's a permanent transaction. The only way to reverse it is to do another transaction of you then giving me that money back. Bitcoin was invented to make this exact thing possible over the internet. The problem with the internet is up until now, every transaction was through a third party. Cash is the only system of peer-to-peer money that existed before Bitcoin. So other ways of paying you, I could have wrote you a check, I could have used a debit card, a bank wire, PayPal or Venmo, Apple Pay. Every other form of payment goes through an intermediary. someone to process and settle this payment. And a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes when that happens. So cash is really the only way to give you money directly. On the internet, there's no option to pay cash, right? So every transaction has to go through an intermediary. There's no way to pay someone directly on the internet until Bitcoin was invented. So instead of having an intermediary, let's draw the same example with the internet now. Here's me at my laptop, and I'm trying to send money to you on your laptop. I don't really like those laptops. They just look like L's. Let's make them desktops. So we might use some payment gateway or system. Let's just say PayPal. And then PayPal will send that money to you. Where Bitcoin and blockchain comes in is replacing this with a network of nodes that can make this transaction possible. So what might that look like? All right, my drawing is a little weak, but basically we have a bunch of nodes, and this transaction is going to be given to one of these nodes, and that's going to be added to the blockchain, and then that money will appear up over on your end. So instead of one centralized entity, we now have a bunch of nodes that, anybody can own one of these nodes, so it's permissionless and decentralized. And the network is what makes that transaction possible. So it's not 100% peer-to-peer in that I send from my computer directly to your computer. It's supported by a decentralized network. This drawing, in case you couldn't figure it out, each one of these are nodes. And a node is really just a word to mean a computer. Any one of these specific computers that is connected to this network. So basically, Bitcoin was introduced as a form of digital cash. That was the purpose of Bitcoin, the ability to send money directly to individuals online. Now, has it scaled the way it was originally intended? I'm not too sure about that. It seems like the majority of people are starting to think of Bitcoin as something that might be more of an asset or something to store wealth in. And that's because transactions are fairly slow, they can be expensive, and the number of transactions that the Bitcoin network can support is fairly limited. So if everybody in the world was on Bitcoin, well, it probably wouldn't work. However, there's various other cryptocurrencies that have been introduced to potentially fix this problem. And people still think of Bitcoin as like the internet gold in a way. So at the time of this writing, a Bitcoin is worth about 50 grand. However, you don't just have to buy one Bitcoin. You can actually buy fractional Bitcoin. So it's divisible to like a ton of decimals. So you don't have to have $50,000 to get started with Bitcoin. So what else should you really know before moving on? Well, there's a lot of different information that I could share with you. For one, Bitcoin is open source. That means you can go see the source code and see how it works yourself. You can go to bitcoin.org, that's the Bitcoin Foundation, where they give you resources on how to learn Bitcoin, how to get started, and how to set up a full node on your computer. But there's also a ton of other blockchains out there, and a lot of them have different purposes. So there's been blockchains. There's a fuzzy floating around. There's been blockchains introduced to help with distributed applications, and there's been blockchains introduced to help with the supply chain or, tracking a product from origin to destination. And there's a bunch of different uses of blockchain. So it's not all about peer-to-peer money sending, even though that's where it started, and the financial aspect of this is tightly rooted with blockchain. That's just part of it, and as you go on, you'll be able to really learn some of the different blockchain networks that you can get started with, where you can actually program and you can make applications that are decentralized instead of hosting them on some centralized software like AWS or Google Cloud Platform. So there's a lot of different options out there, and there's another side note I just wanted to bring up, and that is there is a lot of anarchy and some like mysterious stuff around cryptocurrency, but I don't think that always has to be the case. It seems like a lot of people in the cryptocurrency space just want to watch the world burn and then restart from the ground up. However, I think a more realistic thing that's going to happen is some of these centralized companies are going to learn to adopt this new way of thinking, and things will adapt such that things become more decentralized and less data is going to be privately hosted on a centralized distributed network. Like, for example, Apple, I think, has like 75,000 plus nodes on a Cassandra database. Well, that's still a centralized entity, even though it's distributed across the world. I think as time goes on, companies will start to back away from maybe that centralized ownership of data, even though it's extremely valuable and a lot of these big tech companies are data-hungry companies. I think they're going to realize that more and more people are becoming aware of privacy concerns, ownership concerns, and so forth. So the cryptocurrency and blockchain market is growing very fast, and I think we're still on just the bare minimum of what it's going to be in the next 10 years. So where it's going to go, I don't know. What kind of life it's going to introduce, I have no idea. However, I do think it's going to be a big part, and I think it's important to understand the foundation. So that is why I was motivated to do this series here. Now, another thing that I want to warn you just before you go on with your life, I mean, I know you're going to go and watch the second video, but just in case, there are a lot of scams with blockchain and cryptocurrency. Part of that is because it's so new and misunderstood, and another reason is any transactions are permanent. So if you accidentally give, all your money away to someone, it's gone. Part of the blockchain is shifting that ownership of your money and your life from third parties like banks or Apple or PayPal or whatever, and putting that ownership back on you. So if you send money and it's to the wrong person, well, that money is essentially gone unless they're willing to send that money back. More than likely they're not. So watch out for scams, and if you're reading comments on this video or any other videos, more than likely any of them that talk about, brokers or traders, it's all scams. And people will even copy names of popular YouTubers such as myself and comment as me, even though it's not really me. So you need to check for the highlighting to make sure it's actually from my account, because I've had significant people reach out to me saying that I was asking them for Bitcoin or something, or trying to get them to invest in something, and that is all a scam. If you're going to go into this industry, then you need to be vigilant and watch out for these scams. Not only for yourself, but help others know as well, because there's a lot of education that needs to happen for people to be able to use blockchain for everyday technology and everyday transactions. So we have a lot to go. Let's stay tuned with this series, because by the end of this, you're going to have all that figured out, and it's going to be really spectacular. Super excited for this series and where it's going to go. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments section below. Also wanted to just do a final announcement that I did create a cryptocurrency specific channel called Coin Breakthrough. Very creative. It's based off of my current website, Code Breakthrough. So I was like, oh, code, coin, it sounds kind of similar. But on that channel, it's more of a different style, getting news and updates on the industry. So if you want to stay up to date with the industry, more on the crypto side and decentralized finance and all of that stuff, then go check out Coin Breakthrough. I also have blogs for these videos. I was going to package it up into a PDF and just sell it, but I decided, since we have that sponsor, Crypto.com, if you really want to support this channel, you can go sign up for the Ruby debit card. So go check out the notes if you want the written resources for all of these videos. I think that'll be tremendously helpful just to follow along and see everything that I'm saying on paper, has the good terminology and everything you need to know. And last thing, if you want to watch all of these videos, make sure you're watching it from the playlist, as that will autoplay after each video or just go to the next one. If you enjoy this content, please be sure to click like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey everybody, it's Caleb. Welcome back to episode 2 in your blockchain series. If you're just jumping in, then I encourage you to watch this from the playlist from the beginning, because that's going to give you all the information you need to learn the foundation of blockchain and all the different cryptocurrency types out there. So what are we going to talk about in this video? We're going to be talking about the actual blockchain data structure. Well, first let's just do a quick recap of the previous video, which is why blockchain's so freaking cool. And basically, it's decentralized, it's distributed, it's public, it's permissionless, and it's permanent. That might not be the exact order I gave them in the previous video, but those are the 5 attributes I kind of put together. They're not like the official blockchain attributes or anything. But if you can remember those things, then you're pretty much going to understand the basis of blockchain. Now, do keep in mind, blockchain is an industry. There is not the blockchain. Instead, we have a bunch of different blockchains out there. We have the Bitcoin blockchain, Ethereum blockchain, and so forth. So this is the basis. Some of these might have slight variations in how they work. So just keep that in mind. We're kind of learning the foundation. This is describing how the Bitcoin blockchain works. And then all the other ones are just variations of that. So once you understand why Bitcoin is a thing, what problems it's trying to solve, peer-to-peer payments online, you can start to think about what the data structure actually looks like. And is literally a chain of blocks. Each one of these blocks, you can think of them as commits. Like here are the transactions we're adding to the blockchain. Boom, these ones. We wait a little bit, around 10 minutes in Bitcoin's case. Boom, we're adding these ones. And then these ones. And then these ones. So for you computer science nerds out there, this structure is essentially a linked list where each node is a block. Now the way they're connected is a little bit different. Instead of this block pointing to the next block, it kind of works the other way around, where this block is going to have the hashed version of the previous block in this block's information. So these are cryptographically connected such that if we changed something in this block, it's going to change the hash for each one of these, basically changing the entire blockchain. So because of an important system that makes this blockchain possible called proof of work, which we're going to get into that, it would be very, very difficult to change a piece of information in like a block really far back. The farther back the block, the harder it is to change that information, which is why people say blockchain is permanent. So each one of these blocks contains transactions. So it might be something like 0.5 Bitcoin 2, and what's this 2 here? What do we put here? Well, I mentioned in the previous video that it doesn't have the person's name. It doesn't just give out everybody's identity. We have pseudonyms, and this is actually going to be an address. It's just a combination of characters. So we'll just put address. Now, what does an address actually look like? Well, it varies. There's a couple different forms, but it's just a giant sequence of characters, maybe like 34 characters long. So here's an example Bitcoin address. It can also be represented with a QR code. So if someone's working with a wallet, they can scan your QR code. Like mentioned, there's a bunch of different formats for the address. The most recent is BEC32, if you want to research that. And also be aware that every blockchain is going to be different. So if you send Bitcoin to a Bitcoin Cash address, that's a good way to lose your money. Now, here's the question. This address, how does the blockchain know that this is you? How do you have permission to then spend that money? Well, this address is actually derived from something called your private key. So it's going to look something like this. Private key. And this can generate, there's actually another step in here, the public key. And then this public key can generate your address. And this is a one-way conversion. So if you have this private key, you can generate this address. But if you have this address, you can't work your way back and generate the private key. So the address does not give away your private key. You can share the address with other people. However, your private key, this is basically your username, email, and password for the Bitcoin. It's 100% access to the funds to spend them. This is basically proof that you are able to spend these monies. Such a weird way to say it, these monies. So, if I have a private key and you send money to this address, I'll be able to spend that money because I have that private key. So don't give that out to anybody, no exceptions. Now, what does a private key look like? Well, here, let me show you mine. Psych, I ain't dumb. But basically, a private key is going to be 64 characters long, hexadecimal, so digits 0 through 9, and A through F. And if you want more information on the binary junk, I have some videos on binary, hexadecimal, all that stuff. And I also have videos a little bit on cryptography and hashing, which you can watch those as well. But basically, with hex, one hexadecimal number or character coordinates with 4 bits. So a 64 length hex number is going to coordinate to a 256 bit number. So when people say the private key is 256 bits, you can represent that using just 64 characters, anything 0 through 9 or A through F. Now, in general, and I'm not going to get into this in too much detail, an address is a one-time use thing. So what that means is if you want to continue to receive money from people, you're going to need a lot of addresses. And because these addresses come from a private key, you're going to need a lot of private keys. So how do you manage so many of these private keys? Well, a lot of times you're going to have a seed phrase in whatever wallet application you use. So there's tons of wallet applications, and I really don't want to get too much into the applied cryptocurrency part of this. This is really just supposed to be the theory behind this. I do have videos on how to do this if you want to go check those out, how to get started buying Bitcoin or whatever it might be. But basically, you're going to have a wallet application that has a seed phrase. And this is going to be a sequence of words, maybe 12 words, maybe 24 words. And this seed phrase can be used to generate all of the private keys that you're going to need. So it's going to look like this. This is just a really simple example, but we can generate numerous private keys from this seed phrase. And then that allows us to have a new address for every single transaction. So it might look like this. Don't worry too much about the public key. You actually don't really see that a whole lot when working with cryptocurrencies. But we have the private keys that we manage. And actually, this is a managed service with the seed phrase. So all we have to remember is the seed phrase. The private keys are generated, the addresses are generated, and then you can send these out to different people. So, I send an invoice to John, I send an invoice to Sally, and I send an invoice to Kara. So that's how it can look. So now we just have a master password. This is going to give us full access to all of our funds for that wallet. All right, got some other stuff in here. The immutability of blockchain, Genesis blocks, confirmations. There's a lot of stuff. Basically, what happens is as the chain continues to grow, it becomes more and more difficult to change information earlier on in the chain. And each time a new block is added, the transaction is said to have a new confirmation. So in that first block, it'll have one confirmation. Like you send me money, it gets added to the blockchain as one confirmation. Then a new block is added, which has the hash of the previous block integrated in this block. We'll talk a little bit about how that works later on. Now we have two confirmations because that transaction is 2 levels deep in this blockchain. And I'm just going to draw some more history here just so you can kind of see where it's at. So this is the one we're interested in. And then we add a new block, and now we have 3 confirmations. Generally, at this point, it's considered permanent. For lightweight transactions, buying a coffee or whatever, 1 confirmation is typically fine. It's the equivalent of like if you sell something and someone pays with a debit card, and then they go and tell the debit card company that it was fraud or try to cancel that transaction. There's a chance it can be reversed. But it happens so rarely that merchants don't really worry too much about it. They just sell things like normal. They don't sell and then say, hey, after 30 days and it's settled, then I'll send you the product. No, they just send the product, and most people don't do that. Same thing with blockchain. With something having 1 confirmation, yeah, there's possibilities that it can be changed, or that this person can maliciously manipulate the blockchain, but it's very unlikely. So for small purchases, that's usually fine. For larger purchases, the merchant might want 3 confirmations. At 3 confirmations, that transaction is already 3 levels deep. And for that buyer to modify this block and this block and this block while competing with the entire network of this cryptocurrency, that's actually very difficult. So 3 is like that magic number. And then if you want like super confirmed, 6. At that point, it's like, it's in the blockchain, you know? It's a thing. They're mended together. That transaction is not leaving that blockchain unless there's a really big problem with the blockchain. But anyways, 1 for small transactions, 3 for pretty big transactions, and then 6 is just like eternally permanent. And you can see this history goes back. At some point it had to start, and this is known as the Genesis block. So yeah, I don't really have anything to say about that besides the fact that it was the first block. So we talk about these blocks and how transactions are added into them, but I haven't really gotten very specific on the actual blockchain protocol. This is one of those things that varies from blockchain to blockchain. In the case of Bitcoin, a new block is added on average every 10 minutes. So when you buy that coffee, it could take 10, 15, 20 minutes maybe for that block to be confirmed. But again, the chances of it not working are low. You can probably just buy that coffee and leave. If the seller wants to make sure they get their money, they might need to wait until that block is confirmed, which could take 10 or 20 minutes. The time varies because it takes a randomized time based on how long it takes to mine these blocks. And we're going to get into Bitcoin mining here in the series as well. But on average, it's every 10 minutes. So if they want 3 confirmations, you might buy that car and then have to sit there waiting for like 30 minutes before those 3 blocks are confirmed. So all these things that describe how the blockchain works is described as the protocol. And these are very hard to change. And this is what allows people to build trust in that specific blockchain because they know it's going to follow a certain set of rules. They can be changed, however, it's a very gradual process, and Bitcoin is one of the slowest ones to change where every change is a big deal. Some of the other blockchains that are developing much more quick or doing different things, they might have very big changes very often. So a lot of people think of Bitcoin as like the trustworthy gold standard, I guess. And if there are major changes, this can actually cause a division, a fork of that blockchain that could potentially survive in parallel. So that is known as a hard fork. And a lot of the different blockchains out there are actually just Bitcoin forks. So let's say there's a big disagreement and, we want to change that block time. Well, that's going to be something that's pretty hard to do in the Bitcoin network. So, we'll just do it on our own. We'll create a new cryptocurrency. We'll take your guys' code because it's open source and that's fine. But we're going to change that block time down to 2.5 minutes. That would be a really severe case where, that new cryptocurrency exists in parallel with Bitcoin and you can choose which one you want. But in some cases, those changes can be brought into the original project such that the original blockchain, let's say Bitcoin, actually adapts over time. So that is all I have for this video. There's some extra resources in the blog if you want to do a little bit extra reading. Stay tuned for the next video. We're going to continue our discussion on blockchain, get into some more specifics. Again, thank you for watching. If you want to support this channel, just ask that you go try Crypto.com out. Great place to buy and sell cryptocurrencies if you're just looking to get started learning the different projects. I recommend Crypto.com. You can use the referral link Caleb, and it's just an app that you can download on your phone. Really simple. Other than that, congrats for making it this far. You're already doing better than probably like 3/4 of the people that started this series. So continue watching, and we're going to continue learning a ton. If you enjoy the content, please be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey everyone, it's Caleb. Welcome back. This episode is number 3 in your blockchain series. Now, if you're just jumping in from search or whatever, welcome. I think the series is great if you want to start from the beginning and learn all about blockchain. But this video specifically, we're going to learn the theory behind Bitcoin. Where did it come from? Where do Bitcoins come from? All these questions around Bitcoin. There's a lot, and it's fairly new to a lot of people, so it can be a little confusing, but we'll figure it out. So what in the world even is Bitcoin? Well, I'm not going to get totally into the basics of what Bitcoin is because we already talked about that in the previous 2 videos, but basically Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer online currency. So the ability to pay money from one person to another person without having to go through a centralized entity. It does go through the network. However, this network is decentralized. These nodes are owned by numerous different people. Where did Bitcoin come from? Well, it came from a person or entity, I don't know, Satoshi Nakamoto, and nobody knows who this is for sure. There's a lot of interesting stories, and if you are interested in the history, you can try to figure out who it is. A lot of people have been trying to figure it out, so that's fun. Nobody has come out clean saying, oh, I'm Satoshi Nakamoto. But the blockchain started back in 2009 with the Genesis block, and every time a block was added, there was a block reward. And this is one of the things defined in the protocol of the blockchain. We talked about blockchain protocols in the previous episode. And this block reward is basically an incentive for people to try to confirm these blocks. And that is the whole concept behind Bitcoin mining. If you contribute your computer as a mining node, you can process, and there's a chance you can get that block reward of 50 Bitcoin, which, dang, that would be a ton of money. But unfortunately, it doesn't quite work that way because this Bitcoin reward, this block reward, is cut in half every 4 years. So it started off at 50, and then it went to 25. Yeah, we're doing basic math here. 12.5, and now we're at 6.25. And it's going to keep doing that, and eventually it just goes to 0. At that point, is the incentive to Bitcoin mine gone? Not entirely, because there's still going to be transaction fees. So with every transaction, there's a little bit of fees, and these get added up together and are given in addition to the block reward to whoever confirms that block. They say the first commercial transaction for Bitcoin was buying 2 Papa John's pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin, which would be worth like unlimited money right now. But beyond Papa John's, Bitcoin really had a dark start, often used in black markets. And I think as time has gone on, it's gone mainstream. And now the demographic is more just normal people instead of, drug lords and serial killers, which is always a great thing. So now Bitcoin, it still has that dark past. I mean, we can't ignore that. But Bitcoin is being accepted by numerous people and becoming normal to people. Now, how do you actually acquire Bitcoin? Well, the easiest way, in my opinion, is to sign up for a service like Crypto.com. And I'm not just saying that because they're sponsoring the series, although this is a perfect time for me to say their name because you can go to a service like Crypto.com and you can buy cryptocurrencies using fiat money, which is just United States dollars or euros or not cryptocurrency. And when you do this, there is an exchange, right? You have to pay for it, but you also have to pay with your information. And this is usually because of laws, at least in the United States. I'm not really sure about everywhere else in the world. But the companies that sell cryptocurrency have to adhere to the laws where they're selling it. So KYC laws are a thing in the United States. So in order to sign up for one of these services, you will usually have to get a photo of your identification, maybe a photo of yourself, and possibly even a photo of you holding your identification. And this is basically to associate your account with an actual person. And this is required by law. It's not just that company collecting information about you. It is required anytime you're trading fiat currency for cryptocurrency. Well, not everybody wants to do that, right? Not everybody wants to associate their cryptocurrency balance to their identity. So, in that case, you would need to acquire cryptocurrency through some other means, preferably not on the black market. But you can accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. So if you're selling a service or selling a product, you can accept Bitcoin through a wallet. So for example, I use the Coinbase wallet. It's very handy. And that is a wallet that's not associated with an online service. So I have full ownership of the seed phrase, and nobody has access to my account except myself. That's a little bit different than some of these wallets that are attached to online services, and I'm not saying those are all bad, but that is a layer closer to centralization. If you think about it, if you're trying to send money to someone, or actually let's just say this is me and I'm trying to send money to you, and one of the options is to go through a bank. And a lot of the financial transactions will be settled in banking somewhere. Like, honestly, all this is abstracted away so well that most of us don't even really know how money works or how transferring money or buying things actually works. We just buy stuff, it comes out of our account, and we're all happy. But when you transfer through a bank, the bank does financial stuff to basically settle that transaction, or they're basically filling the role of confirming that transaction. Well, if you say, we don't like those third parties, those intermediaries, we don't want no centralized entities, we're going to get rid of that bank. And instead, I'm going to use a service like an exchange. And that's where I'm going to store my wallet, and then I can pay you from there. Well, if you think about it, who owns an exchange? A company, which is a centralized entity. So by keeping 100% of your cryptocurrency balance on an exchange, you're kind of missing out on the whole larger purpose of cryptocurrencies, which is to not have to rely on an intermediary for online transactions. We don't want to have to trust centralized entities. Now, do I believe all centralized entities are evil? No, I don't. I mean, a lot of the services I use are centralized entities. Companies are centralized entities, and these companies offer services. So if you take a bank, for example, and you get rid of it, and you just do it all on your own, well, that gives you more risks. You're responsible for more now. So this is where a lot of people screw up. They lose their cryptocurrency, and there's nothing they can do about it because they didn't realize all of the services that the bank offered. So when they get rid of the bank and they get rid of the exchange and they just manage that money on their own, well, there's a lot more responsibility and there's a lot more risk. So in my opinion, it's less about removing 100% of centralized entities and more about having knowledge and ownership over what you're delegating to these centralized entities and not just trusting every company to take care of you. Ultimately, that responsibility is your own. And when you manage your money yourself, then you start to really think about what you're doing with your money, because you can't just call support and be like, yo, bro, I lost my money. No, you can't do that. So Bitcoin is a permanent transaction. And that is one of the most important things about this. With centralized entities, there's opportunities for transactions to be reversed. Bitcoin, it's not possible. So now I want to talk briefly about Bitcoin mining. We're going to have a dedicated video on how this works, but basically Bitcoin mining is the competition to confirm these blocks. So we have these full nodes that support the Bitcoin network. And these nodes do not get Bitcoin or paid to do this. So there's not a direct financial incentive to create a full node. But there are various benefits of creating a full node. One, you might just want to see Bitcoin be successful. And if you have a lot of wealth in Bitcoin, you're going to want to make sure Bitcoin is as successful as possible. So in that situation, you might set up a full node. It's also recommended by the Bitcoin wiki to run transactions, at least really important ones, through a full node. And that gives you the most security. We're not going to get into that entirely right now, but it is important to know that there's different node types. We have full nodes. We also have mining nodes, so we'll just draw some of those here. And we also have simple payment clients, often known as SPV clients, simple payment verification. You have to rely on these full nodes. If you want to be as secure as possible, you will want that full node you rely on to be yours. So that way you know it's following the rules, it's doing everything it's supposed to support that Bitcoin network properly. But I'm getting a little sidetracked. What in the world is Bitcoin mining? Well, if these are the miners, we have 3 miners right here. These are the ones that confirm the transactions by basically putting computational effort into confirming these transactions. And the way this works is there's a hash function, and we have to get a certain output below a certain target. And we're going to guess the input that makes that output, the hash value, valid. So again, if you've never heard of this, this is probably just like, what? This is confusing. But we have to guess a hash value lower than the target. And we do that through guessing an input that we pass into a hash function. It's actually a double SHA or SHA-256 hashing. So we'll go into all the details of what that means when we talk about Bitcoin mining specifically. But basically, this node and this node and this node, all of those mining nodes are going to compete to get this valid hash value because they want that good old Bitcoin reward, right? So if they win, they get 6.25 Bitcoin at the time of this video. If you're watching this 5 years in the future, it's going to be half of that. This proof of work system is actually really important because it protects the network. In an earlier video, we talked about how these blocks are connected in the blockchain, and you can have something like a transaction that's 3 confirmations. And basically what that means is we've done this proof of work process, getting a correct hash value 3 times, which is very time consuming. And it's going to take 30 minutes based on the block time. So the block time on Bitcoin is 10 minutes. A new block is every 10 minutes. So getting 3 confirmations is going to take 30 minutes. If you wanted to change that history on that blockchain, you're basically going to have to redo that proof of work 3 times in competition with the entire Bitcoin mining network. So it's very, very difficult because you are only a small percentage of the Bitcoin network. And now this introduces some interesting challenges, like what if you own 51% of the network? Or what if you own 40% of the network and you just got really lucky? And those are all challenges that are like the details of Bitcoin, and we're just trying to learn the basics here, but just understand that there are challenges to this kind of system. Okay, but this is starting to look really sloppy, so I'm going to erase it. But the main thing you need to understand is that the deeper the block is, the more confirmations, the more challenging it is to change that block. The cryptocurrency protects the network because it incentivizes numerous people to contribute to that proof of work, which makes being malicious very difficult. It also makes being malicious very costly because you're going to have to contribute a lot of computing power. And even if you did manage to get enough computing power, there's limited things you can do, because if you imagine a transaction, let's say getting 0.5 Bitcoin, and it goes to the address that you own. So this is you, and you own this address. Well, if you own this address, that means you have the private key. And basically, when you have that private key, you can confirm very easily that you have permission to spend that Bitcoin. If you go and try to spend it at another shop, you sign that transaction using your private key. It's essentially impossible to fake a transaction because you need that private key. So even if you do get computational power and you can fake these transactions, the full nodes are going to reject that. Now you can do some things, you have your own private key, so you could in theory spend the coin twice, possibly. I guess I don't really know because I've never really done a ton of research on how to hack the Bitcoin network. I should probably do that though, because ethical hacking, right? The whole idea behind Bitcoin can be seen in a previous technology called Hashcash. And with this, let's say in order to send an email, you have to just use a little bit of computational power. You got to calculate something or something. Well, that's not going to hurt you if you're just sending a few emails to your friends or to colleagues. But if you're trying to send spam to thousands or millions of people, that computation is going to add up and be very expensive. So it disincentivizes spam mail. Wait, is that the way to say that? Yeah, it disincentivizes spam mail. So that was an example, and that principle was foundational in proof of work. Basically, if you're going to maliciously attack the Bitcoin network, you're going to have to pay a lot of money. And it's probably more profitable just to use that computational power to mine cryptocurrency. So that's why a lot of these blockchains have cryptocurrencies associated with them, because they're basically an incentive for people to protect the network. So other than that, some of the limitations of Bitcoin, it can't support hundreds of thousands of transactions per second, more like 7 at the max. So it's pretty limited on transaction speed. And I'm sure there's just a ton more that I need to learn personally to truly understand the power of Bitcoin. But you can read the white paper. It's on bitcoin.org if you want to understand the technical introduction of this subject. It's a pretty good read if you're into that kind of thing. I tried to read it a couple times, and it is in fact very helpful. There's also a Bitcoin wiki, so that's very helpful for more easy to consume content. And you can continue to watch this wonderful series. So thank you for watching. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, corrections, whatever, leave them in the comment section below. And if you want to support this channel, just go ahead and sign up for Crypto.com using the referral code Caleb. Be sure to subscribe, like the video, and I appreciate all of you. I'll see you in the next one. Also, just like an extra warning, don't fall for any of the scams. I'm sure there's going to be, anytime we talk about Bitcoin, there's spamming in the comment section. Don't fall for any of it. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Caleb, and this video is going to be basically an explanation on how proof of work actually works. So in other words, how Bitcoin mining works. So proof of work is known as a consensus mechanism. Why do I have a circle and an AI on my chalkboard? Anyways, basically this is a consensus mechanism, a way for all of the nodes to agree on things. And the consensus mechanism of choice that we're going to be talking about in this video is known as proof of work. So instead of having a centralized entity confirm transactions, this is what Bitcoin and other blockchains use to confirm transactions, or to confirm blocks of transactions. So before we understand proof of work fully, we need to understand what's known as a hash function. Now we've talked about these a ton in some of my other programming videos, but this is really important in proof of work. So I'm going to draw a hash function as a square, or technically it's a rectangle, sorry. This is our hash function. And a function will take an input and give an output. So in a hash function, we have some input, and the output specifically is known as a hash value. And it's pretty much just like a bunch of random characters. It's not something you can read. And basically, what it'll do is it'll be a one-way process to take some readable input and give us some not readable output. So just as an example, we might hash the string Caleb, and the hash value might look like, I'm just gonna reference my notes here, I don't have it memorized, B3A0F1FF, and it's honestly just gonna keep going for 64 characters in this case. And it really depends on what hash function you use. A really popular one is SHA-256. And this is going to give us a 256-bit hash value. Now, the thing that's important about this is that if you take that same input and ran it through this hash function again, you're going to get that same output. So you can basically look at this output and you have no idea what input gave us that value, because it's just a bunch of random characters, right? But you can go the other way where you take an input and confirm that it gives us that output. This is the same functionality used when you try to log into a website. You might take your password, let's just say it's pass. This will be processed through a hash function, and then the result of that hash function will be compared to the hash function that's stored in the database. And the benefit here is that you can easily confirm if they got the right password, but you don't actually store that password in the database. So it's the same functionality that's going to be used in proof of work. That's exactly how a hash function works. One of the most popular is SHA-256. This is a version of SHA-2 if you want to know more information. Now, I mentioned this will be 64 characters, but then I said this SHA-256 is going to give us 256 bytes. So what's going on here? Well, basically, each one of these characters is known as hexadecimal. I'm just going to write hex. It's a little bit easier. And one hex digit coordinates to 4 bits. So one hex digit equals 4 bits. So as an example, we might have the binary 0011, which is the value 3. We would represent this in hex with the value 3. We might also have another one, 1111, which is 15. And we would represent this in hex with an F. So hexadecimal is just a condensed form of binary, if you think about it. You can represent 256 bits in only 64 characters. So now that you have that prerequisite knowledge, we're going to build up an example that starts off a little bit silly. I swear. It's going to be a pretty silly example to start, but we're going to continue to add layers, and then by the end of this, you're going to fully understand Bitcoin mining. So it'll be pretty cool. So basically, we're going to play a game. I like games. Let's say we have some hash function, and I want me and you to compete to see which one of us can get the first value under 500 here. So the goal here is to get a hash value below 500. All right, start. But there's one extra condition of this game I forgot to mention. The input to this theoretical hash function here has to be tacos. All right, the string tacos. So we both take the string tacos and pass it into this hash function. And let's just say we both get the value 505. Uh-oh, we lose. Both of us lose because neither of us have met this condition. That's weird. Like, why am I making you already know what the input is? I'll explain that soon, but basically that's one of my requirements of this game. It has to have the value tacos as the input, and we have to have a hash value below 500. Those are the rules. So, because this game is very important, we start conjuring up, what can we do to make this work? What if we include tacos, but not just tacos, we add a little bit extra in there? So let's say we try tacos 0. And let's just keep track of what outputs we get here. Let's say tacos gives us the value 505. And just if you're confused how this number coordinates to binary or hexadecimal, binary and hexadecimal is just another way to represent a decimal number. It's just different forms of representing the same thing. So you can just think as the output as some really large number. But this is just a theoretical hash function where the numbers are really small, just for our example. So tacos gave us 505, and let's just say tacos 0 gave us 530. Well, at least now we have some variation. There's a chance if we keep trying different things, we'll be able to get under 500. Let's say we both try tacos 1, and we get something like 504. We're getting close, not quite there. Tacos 2, 709. And then we try one more option here, tacos 3, and we finally get a value such as 409, which meets the qualifications to win the game. So whoever managed to guess tacos 3 as the input first wins. Now, obviously, since I'm really competitive, I'm probably going to win. So I calculated these very fast. So I beat you to guessing this hash value. So I'm the winner. So that is how we win. We basically try a bunch of different variations of the input, and the first person to get that output wins. But this introduces a big problem. Now, obviously, I'm a beast. I beat you in this competition, and I'm just gonna keep beating you because I'm just faster at computing these. You know, maybe I set up my computer to be really fast, and I win every single time. Well, that's not exactly fair because we basically have one winner every single time. Nobody wants to play that game, and that game's not going to last very long. So, to fix this, we introduce even more variation to the input. Now, instead of having me and you calculate tacos as the input and then just changing a little number, we're going to have to calculate this using our first name, just in theory, or some piece of data that is different for each person. So instead of tacos for me, I'm going to use Caleb, and that's going to completely change all these outputs. So let's say Caleb 0 gives us 934, and then let's say Caleb 1 gives us 572. Caleb 2 gives us 605, and then Caleb 3 gives us like 836. And all while I'm doing this, you're doing the same exact thing with your name. So we'll write those over here. Let's say your name is Ali. So Ali 0, this might give us 730. Ali 1 might give us 930. Ali 2 might give you 800. And then Ali 3, let's say it gives you 300. And you win. And even if, in this situation, I got to Caleb 3 faster, well, that wasn't a good enough answer. So if you were just a little bit slower, but you were the first one there, you still win. You know, I might have been all the way up to Caleb 300 and still haven't calculated a hash value below the requirement here. You might have gotten on your first try. So introducing that variation, not only with these numbers, but also variation between the different players, now it's a more fair competition. You know, Caleb can win, and in general, because Caleb is faster, he's going to win more often, but Ali, you, still has a chance of winning because it's more randomized. If let's say I was twice as fast at doing these calculations than you, well, I'm going to win about twice as often. However, because of the variation, you're still going to win sometimes. All right, so this is just a silly, stupid game. So what I want to do now is I want to look at each one of these components and see how this correlates with Bitcoin mining. These participants, this one's me, and this one is you. These are known as the Bitcoin miners. They are the ones playing the game. So these are the miners. This hash value we are trying to get under is known as the target. This arbitrary number that we're just incrementing is known as the nonce. I'm running out of places. Okay, this one's going to be a little off to the side, but the nonce refers to that number that we're just incrementing just to add some variation. And then instead of actually using the first name here, we will have the transactions of the block where one of the transactions is paying the person who wins the competition. And this is known as the Coinbase transaction. So in Ali's case here, Ali will have a transaction paying herself. In my case, I'll have a transaction paying myself. So the ledgers are different, so it introduces that variation. And last thing, instead of using really small numbers like 500, we're going to be using astronomically huge numbers. Remember that in Bitcoin, it uses double SHA-256, which means the output can be up to 256 bits long. And if you just want to know, you can go ahead and look up the max number for a 256-bit number. It's really big, and I'm not going to try and write it out. So now that you understand a little bit about how this little game works, it's still a little unclear how Bitcoin mining works. So let's kind of go through this example again using Bitcoin. I drop my chalk every video, I swear. Let's go through this example again with Bitcoin. So we are both Bitcoin miners, and we're competing for that sweet, sweet coin. So instead of having our name or some really silly thing being what makes variation, we're going to have the transactions. So this is the block with all the transactions that we're trying to confirm. And you have one as well. And they're slightly different because, again, mine is going to reward that Bitcoin mining reward to myself. Yours is going to reward you. So the hash is going to be different. And the way that this process works is we build a Merkle tree. Now, I'm not going to get into all of the data structure stuff here, but here's a quick intro on how that works. Let's say we had 4 transactions, A, B, C, and D. Bitcoin takes the double hash of each one of these. And I'm going to write that as D hash. So D hash of A, D hash of B, D hash of C, and D hash of D. And I'll just assign these to variables D1, D2, D3, and D4. Then we basically combine these. So we're basically trying to get just one value, so we have to combine these four. So let's just say we have D5, and this is going to be the double hash of D1 plus D2. And then again, we'll have D6 be the double hash of D3 and D4. All right, we're getting closer. We're down to just 2 now, but we still just need to get 1. So let's say D7, and that's going to be the double hash of D5 and D6. All right, there we go. And this value, that final hash value, is the Merkle root. So we have the Merkle root, and just to basically say that these are going to be different for me and you, let's say this transaction here is that Coinbase transaction. In mine, this transaction would be paying Bitcoin to me. In your block, it would be paying Bitcoin to you. These both can't be true, so we both have to compete to see which one is going to win and be the official block added to the blockchain. But you can think of this Merkle root hash value as a summary of all of the transactions. If you were to change just one of these transactions, that would change that Merkle root, because all of the hash outputs are inputs to the next hashes. So if you visualize this as a tree structure, changing any one of these nodes in this tree is going to ultimately change that top node. And that's just a basic way to confirm that, hey, none of these transactions were tampered with because the hash value is the same. But I'm kind of getting a little too deep into this. That's all you just need to know. This is the Merkle root, and it's basically a summary of all the transactions. Your Merkle root on the block you're trying to confirm is going to be different than the one I'm trying to confirm, and that introduces variation, which makes it possible for anybody to win, not just the fastest computer. That's not the only variation. There's also a timestamp and that nonce we talked about. So basically, we take this Merkle root value and we throw it through the hash function. Oh, it didn't quite meet the target. It's a little too high. So we just increment that nonce, and we just keep doing that until we get a value that is under that target. Now, the nonce isn't the only thing we need to introduce variation, and that's because, you know, the target value can be very high. We might need to make a lot of guesses. And that nonce is only a 32-bit number, which only gives us a limited number of possibilities. So basically, we just increment through that nonce as much as we can until it overflows and restarts from the beginning. And at that point, there is an extra nonce in the Coinbase transaction. That'll get incremented, which will change the Merkle root and introduce more variation. Basically, we don't ever want to repeat calculating the same exact inputs because it's going to give us the same exact output, which we've already tried. So every time we try to guess this hash value, we need to introduce some variation. That's done through the nonce and then the extra nonce. So if we cap out the nonce and, you know, at that point we've tried everything, well, then we just change that extra nonce in the Coinbase transaction, which changes the Merkle root, and it allows us to start this nonce again from the beginning and go through that same entire 32-bit range of options. So again, a lot of detail here, kind of takes some extra background with, you know, overflow and all these different computer science concepts, which you can get all that information on my channel, but just trying to give a pretty good overview that's somewhat technical. Now, I'm also not an expert on this either. You know, there's people that develop this algorithm, and you can get all the source code and stuff if you want to know the super details, but this should be a pretty good intro. So if you didn't figure it out by now, proof of work takes a lot of work. It's done very quickly on your own machine, plus all of the other Bitcoin mining machines in the entire network. And this takes on average 10 minutes to confirm a block. So with all of the computational power of the network, it's going to take 10 minutes. Now, that being said, this 10-minute number is defined in the protocol, and it's not so much that that's just how much work it takes. If we double the computing power, it's not going to make it twice as fast. The time to confirm a block is going to remain 10 minutes. And if we do double the computing power, basically what's going to happen is the difficulty is going to be adjusted such that it stays at 10 minutes. How exactly does this adjustment take place? Well, that target hash value, this can be increased or it can be decreased to make it easier or more difficult. Because we have to get under this target value. So if this target value is really, really high, it's going to be fairly easy. But if this target value is really low, like let's say you had to get a hash value under 5, that's going to be extremely, extremely difficult. So this target is adjusted over time to ensure a 10-minute block confirmation time on average. So it takes a long time, but to actually confirm it is very easy. Once you have the correct hash value that meets the qualifications, checking it is very easy because you can just test all the same inputs and confirm that hash value. And that's the beauty of hashing, is going the other direction. Starting with the hash value and figuring out the inputs is very difficult. But if you have those inputs, you can process them through the same exact hashing algorithm and get that same hash output. So if a miner is like, yo, I figured it out, well, then all the full nodes can confirm that by testing to see if the inputs give that same exact hash value. Again, this is exactly how password checking works for websites. You give an input for your password, and the web server doesn't know if that's your password or not. What it does is it just runs that through a hashing algorithm and then checks to see if the values match with the hash value in the database. So the database doesn't actually store your password, it stores the hash value of your password, which if you have that hash value of your password, you can't easily check to see what the input is. So that was an introduction, but there's still a lot we didn't cover. How exactly is the target determined? What's the difference between target and difficulty? And what about mining pools? There's so many different questions. So we're going to continue this discussion in this series of videos. So if you want to get the full story, then be sure to check out the playlist of all of the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency concepts. Basically lay that foundation for everything you need to understand new cryptocurrencies and the difference between the different cryptocurrencies. And overall, it's a great playlist in my opinion. So please be sure to check it out. And if you enjoy this content, please be sure to subscribe and go sign up for Crypto.com. Get one of your Crypto.com debit cards. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Hey, what is up everyone? This is Caleb, and I am a tutorial on... Oh, hey everybody. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Bitcoin, or I guess proof of work, even a little bit more generally, target and difficulty. Now, as difficult as that sounds, trust me, it's really not that bad. So you might want to check out my previous episode where I talked about proof of work and how it works. And in this, there's something known as a target, and it has to do with a hash function. So we have a hash function, such as SHA-256, and this takes an input and gives us an output known as a hash value. And the way Bitcoin miners win is by calculating a hash value below a certain target. So winner is below target. Now this target exists as a tool to adjust how difficult it is to win in proof of work. In proof of work, the miners have to prove that they've done the work by calculating a hash value below that target, but the amount of total work required goes up and down. This target exists as a tool to adjust the difficulty of Bitcoin mining. So as the target goes up, it becomes easier because getting under a larger number is easier. As the target goes down, the acceptable values are decreased, so it becomes more difficult. So this is directly related to difficulty, which is pretty much a more human-readable inverse of this. So, as the target goes up, the difficulty goes down, and as the target goes down, the difficulty goes up. So you'll hear both, but they're not interchangeable. They're like the opposite. This is just a more friendly variation because it's a little confusing to think of the target and, increasing that target makes it easier. So difficulty is just a little bit more user-friendly. But they're basically describing the same thing, and that is the total effort required across the Bitcoin network. Or, if you're working with a different proof of work network, how much computation is required for that proof of work. And this whole concept of difficulty and target is where some of the controversy in Bitcoin comes up. Basically, this value for this target is adjusted, and it's always going to take 10 minutes for a new block to be added to the blockchain. So 10 minutes. I think my upside down writing is better than my normal writing. And so no matter what, let's say in the case of Bitcoin, everybody in the entire world started mining Bitcoin. That 10-minute thing is programmed into the protocol, so the target is adjusted up and down such that more computational power does not equal more blocks added to the blockchain. It's only a new block every 10 minutes. So the controversy is, hey, is Bitcoin really scalable? As more and more people adopt it, the energy consumption of Bitcoin continues to go up and up and up, but we're not getting a faster rate of new Bitcoin, or we're not getting faster transactions. Ultimately, the Bitcoin network stays pretty much the same. The only difference is the target has gone down and down and down, also known as the difficulty has gone up and up and up, but the end result is pretty much the same. But a lot of people think this is a good thing. Strong protocols make the system trustworthy, and that's one of the big reasons Bitcoin has been so successful, is because we know what's built into the protocol. We can trust it. A lot of people don't want to follow a network that just doubles its output of cryptocurrency. We want something that has a very consistent, predictable monetary policy. Now, if you're looking at a blockchain explorer, you might see this target in the block header as bits. That's what it's talking about. Reading this target isn't 100% clear because it's encoded, so difficulty is just a more friendly option to look at. How exactly does this target get updated? Well, every 2016 blocks, it's updated, which is about every 2 weeks. So if everybody in the entire world jumped on that network, well, it might not be for 2 weeks until the target gets adjusted. So for that period of time, blocks might be added to the network a lot faster. But as soon as that 2 weeks hits, then it's going to be readjusted. The target's going to be much lower, which makes it a whole lot harder to get a successful mine. So now I want to talk a little bit about hash rates and how they're related to difficulty and target. So first up, when it comes to hash rates, I want to talk about the network hash rate. This is the rate of hashing, the computation of these hash values for the entire network. And the number is insanely huge. Like, I've checked the value numerous times and I still feel like I'm incorrect because it's just like, dang, that's huge. So let me just write it out. And heck, just so you feel the pain of how long it takes to write out a giant number like this, I'm just going to leave this playing. All right. I am slow. Ran out of space here, but hot dang, this is starting to look like my student loan debt. So this is 150 quintillion hashes per second. You may also see it as 150 EHS per S. There we go. So 150 quintillion hashes per second, or 150 exahashes or 150 exahashes. There we go. And if you're watching this in the future, this number might actually go up. But fortunately, the target is also a good thing, right? Because let's say Bitcoin crashes, people don't really want to talk about it or hear about it anymore. Well, poor me, because my views will go down. But that target's going to readjust, and then mining is not going to be as competitive. And this is important with things such as the halving. So in Bitcoin, halving. Basically, every 4 years, the Bitcoin reward is cut in half. Right now, it's 6.25, and in about 3 years or so, it's going to be 125. 6.25 divided by 2, 3.125. Okay, we're good. So then the reward for Bitcoin is much less. People might not want to mine as much, which will increase the target value. So we have to get below a higher number, which ultimately makes it easier to mine. Now, when people talk about cryptocurrency mining and they bring up hash rate, they're usually not talking about the network hash rate. Instead, they're talking about their own hash rate, which you can think of it as a percentage of the total network hash rate. If, say, you contributed 10% of the hash rate for the network, well, in that situation, you're going to win about 10% of the time. So when you're building a Bitcoin mining machine or pretty much any proof of work machine, you can figure out what your hashing rate is and basically use that as a benchmark to see if it's a competitive mining computer. Ultimately, the goal for this would basically be to reduce the amount of dollars per hash. All right, now there might be a better way to calculate it, but basically, I'm just kind of pulling this out of my brain. The cheaper the hash you can get, that system is better. So it's not always about building the most boss computer to do the mining. It's about the most efficient per dollar. So a computer that costs twice as much may only have a hashing rate that's 1.5 times as much. So it would be better to have the smaller system in that situation and just have two of them. But we're not talking about building Bitcoin mining machines in this video. Maybe in the future, maybe that could be a little series of its own, but that's just what I wanted to throw out there. There's a difference between an individual's hashing rate and the network's hashing rate. So another thing is mining pools, and in this situation, numerous people will pull their computers together and basically build this one giant Bitcoin or cryptocurrency mining pool. And these nodes basically will split the rewards. So this is great if you don't have enough computational power to realistically win ever. Then you can just contribute to a pool, and when that pool wins, you'll get some reward. There's a lot of different pools out there. There's a lot of different concerns with pools. They're not always just, oh, this is a Bitcoin mining pool. Oftentimes you will join a pool and you will just mine whatever. You'll just basically contribute your computer, and that pool controls what you're mining, and you'll just get rewarded different cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of complexities around pools and also a lot of concerns around pools because, what if just one pool or maybe just one or two or three pools contribute half or more of the computational power? Then we have a really strong centralization of these mining pools. That doesn't necessarily throw the entire network into jeopardy because we still rely heavily on the full nodes, which basically verify all the work of the miners, and they're the ones that really control the protocol of the network. But there's still a lot of concerns out there with that, and you can research some of the risks of centralized mining if you're interested. Last thing, this is just about proof of work. This is just one of many consensus mechanisms. So you also want to learn about proof of stake, other things like proof of space or proof of burn, and this is probably what we'll be talking about in the next video. And if you just want to get a good overview of everything when it comes to cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, then check out the playlist and just watch it from the beginning. I think it'd be a really great way to learn, and I'd enjoy to have you here for the series. So if you've enjoyed the content so far, please be sure to subscribe, check out our sponsor, and stay tuned for the upcoming videos. See ya! Hey everyone, welcome, it's Caleb. This video, we're going to be talking about consensus mechanisms, talk about just a quick overview of the different types so we can have a better overview picture of cryptocurrency and blockchain. Before we jump into talking about the different consensus mechanisms, let's just talk Consensus 101. Basically, what needs to happen when we are sending money between people, we need a way to agree on, what transactions were legit. This is made possible in the traditional system where we have some intermediary, some third party that facilitates these transactions. In the world of blockchain, we don't have these banks or institutions to do that for us, so we need some protocol or algorithm to do it for us. And that is the idea behind a consensus mechanism. And this is a word to describe how we reach consensus. In the case of Bitcoin, all of the nodes have agreed that the first mining node to calculate a valid hash gets the block reward, and that is the confirmed block. And any of the nodes that don't follow these same consensus rules defined in the Bitcoin protocol, well, they're in reality on a different blockchain. They are following different rules. They're not part of this network anymore. So there's a lot of information on forks, and that's something we'll probably get into a lot more detail in upcoming videos. But basically, every single node in the entire network, in the case of Bitcoin, we have the full nodes that enforce the rules. They all have to follow exactly the same rules. And in order for a mining node to ultimately have a confirmed block that is permanent, it needs to adhere to these same rules in order for the full nodes to accept the confirmed block. So basically, the full nodes act as the thing that double checks everybody's work. But that system is known as proof of work. And we just did a really long video talking about the details of how proof of work actually works, if you want to check that out earlier on in the playlist here. But essentially, this proof of work is the system to get these confirmed blocks in Bitcoin or any other proof of work blockchains. So this is one form of a consensus mechanism, but there are other ones as well. And when you leave this video, I want you to get two things. The first one is I want you to get subscribed, and the second one is I want you to get a good overview of the other main consensus mechanisms. So that's all we're really going to talk about with proof of work. Again, if you want the details, check out the video. Next up, I want to talk about proof of stake and compare it to proof of work. Now, before we jump into proof of stake, what do all of these consensus mechanisms have in common? The first thing is basically they're the defined rules to add new blocks to the blockchain, but at a more practical level, why do these consensus mechanisms work? It's because they disincentivize bad players. I think disincentivize is the word, not disincentivize. Disincentivizes. Yep. Disincentivizes, not decentivizes. The thing all these consensus mechanisms have in common is they disincentivize bad players. Basically, we need a way to punish or discourage, anyone who wants to game the system for their advantage, which, in a system tightly coupled with finance, there's going to be some bad players. So in the case of proof of work, the computational effort contributed to mine these blocks is very expensive. And if you're going to do something, you can either mine Bitcoin or you can contribute your computational power in hopes of, hacking Bitcoin or gaming the network in some way. So you have two options. But the second option there of gaming the system is extremely expensive, and you would be probably better off financially to just mine Bitcoin like everybody else. So that is why there's always a cryptocurrency attached to these networks, is because they act as an incentive to get people to support that network, which makes hacking or gaming the system very difficult and very expensive. So that same principle needs to transfer to these other consensus mechanisms for them to be a good, viable consensus mechanism. So what is the case of proof of stake? How does proof of stake work, and how exactly does it encourage people to follow the rules. Well, in proof of stake, let's say you have some cryptocurrency. These are coins, by the way. I'm just kind of drawing stacked coins. You know, you have a bunch of this cryptocurrency, right? And you basically take it and you set it aside in a step known as staking. And when you do this, you get a reward, a staking reward. You can think of it almost as an interest rate. So let's say you get something like 6% growth in your cryptocurrency balance. So in proof of work, new cryptocurrency was created when a new block was created to whatever mining node mined that block. While in proof of stake, instead, that new reward is given to those who set off their cryptocurrency in staking. So that is the incentive. You have a balance, that balance is worth something, and you can set it aside, and that balance grows, and hopefully the coin goes up in value too. You know, let's say the coin goes up 6%. Well, now you have a pretty significant increase in value. One of the benefits of proof of stake is energy consumption is much lower. If you remember us talking about the difficulty of cryptocurrency mining, well, proof of stake, it's not difficult to set your coins aside. You just do it, and then the new coins that are minted are distributed to those who are staking. Now, there's all kinds of controversy about whether proof of stake is a good consensus mechanism, and I'm not here to make any kind of crazy claims, but there's a lot of different opinions out there. That being said, there are a lot of successful proof of stake cryptocurrencies, and even some of the proof of work cryptocurrencies are shifting to proof of stake. In the case of right now, Ethereum is trying to go from proof of work to proof of stake. So ETH2 is proof of stake, ETH1, proof of work. Now, what is the thing that incentivizes people to follow the rules? Well, it's this growth here. And there's also very high risk if you're trying to cheat the system, because if you stake your cryptocurrencies, they are at risk of being slashed if you break the rules. And in that situation, you're going to lose your cryptocurrency. Now, there's a bunch of different approaches to proof of stake. We don't always just want to give the most reward to the person who has the most cryptocurrency. So there is often some randomness and stuff like that. So there's a lot of variations within proof of stake, just as I'm assuming there's variation in proof of work across the different blockchains. You know, and there's a lot of disagreements on, you know, what's that percentage that we should give out each year? You know, we don't want to dilute the currency, or, you know, maybe we want to really incentivize people to stake and give them a percentage that might be higher than they might get in traditional investing. There's all kinds of different questions that I have and other people have as well. Next consensus mechanism I wanted to talk about is proof of space. And this one's pretty interesting. It's not, drop my chalk again. And this one's pretty interesting. It's not talked about nearly as much as proof of stake, but I think it's pretty cool. It's one that I'm very interested in. And basically with proof of space, you contribute hard drive space instead of computing power. So in this case, here's an example. This is a 16 terabyte hard drive. Well, basically, you're going to run a computer software to fill this hard drive, and that's going to take a lot of time and computing power up front. But then you basically have this drive set aside, and this acts as your mining machine, or what's often called farming. And it's thought of as similar to proof of work, but it's a lot more environmentally friendly and uses much less electricity once these drives are full. So that's another option out there. This can also be something where, if we compare it to proof of work for a second, you might have a computer and you already have one, right? So you just set it up to mine cryptocurrency. Well, that immediately uses a significant amount of electricity. Whereas in something like proof of space, you might have extra hard drive storage laying around and you decide, hey, I want to contribute this storage to the network. It's going to use initially some electricity, but it's a lot less than what proof of work would be. So what that means is it's a possible solution to basically allow significant number of people to start contributing to the network very inexpensively. Basically, you can think of it as a way to use resources that are already out there. There's already hard drive space available for a network that is proof of space, whereas proof of work is always going to use computing power. One cryptocurrency that really started this was Burst Coin, and
I don't really know what happened there, but it didn't really turn out the way everybody was hoping. Kind of died off. And now there's some new possible ones that might take off, including a network known as Chia, which I've been experimenting with. And I don't want to say like, oh yeah, these are the ones, because you might be watching this 5 years in the future and the marketplace could definitely change. So just research proof of space and see what is going on at the time of watching this. Now this next one I've never actually used, never really seen much either, so I don't really want to talk about it like I'm some kind of expert or anything, but that's proof of burn. And this one's kind of weird, but basically you get a cryptocurrency in exchange for destroying another cryptocurrency. So if you want this new cryptocurrency, you have to give up something in the process. So there's a high cost to doing this, but you get that new cryptocurrency. In every single scenario, something has to be given up from the miner. In proof of work, you're giving up computing power, electricity cost. In staking, well, you're setting that cryptocurrency aside, and if you break the rules, risk it being slashed. In proof of space, you're giving up hard drive space, and in proof of burn, you're giving up another cryptocurrency. Oftentimes, these cryptocurrencies come from proof of work, so it's still using proof of work, so it's not necessarily environmentally better. However, a lot of people think of it as, we're getting rid of these non-renewable resources and we're building these renewable resources through the process of proof of burn. Again, it's not something I've really researched a whole lot, but just wanted to throw that up here as a possible option. The way this works is there will be an address that can't be spent from, and that's something that's confirmed in the protocol. And basically, you send money to this address, basically for it to be destroyed or sit there eternally, and that process is known as burning. So this is how proof of burn works, but I don't think it has widespread adoption yet. There is also proof of subscribing, which in this consensus mechanism, you subscribe to my channel in exchange for fantastic videos. So that is my introduction to all these different consensus mechanisms. Let me know if there are any other ones I missed, or if there's any cool variations or twists on these consensus mechanisms. Leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe, check out our sponsor, and if you want to just learn everything you can about cryptocurrencies and blockchain, check out the playlist, and I'll see you in the next video.
Welcome back, everybody, to your cryptocurrency course. And this playlist is the absolute best way to start with cryptocurrency, because we're going from the complete beginning up to modern technology, and now we're talking about Ethereum. So that's pretty cool. So if you want all the background info, you can check out my previous episodes on Bitcoin and blockchain technology. Now we're going to be talking about Ethereum, which is a little bit more focused on developers and decentralized finance applications, as opposed to just being a cryptocurrency, a store of wealth. So Ethereum is going to power numerous applications, and people can build apps on top of Ethereum. Now, these apps are often called dApps, for decentralized applications. And decentralized applications can be built on various networks, but one of the most popular ones is Ethereum. So Ethereum is the blockchain. The cryptocurrency that powers this blockchain is known as Ether, or you often just hear it ETH. Now, Ethereum was a fork of Bitcoin, so there's a lot of similarities in how they work. Right now, Ethereum is still proof of work, but they are working on basically a new edition of Ethereum called ETH2 that is switching to a proof of stake system. So by the time you're watching this, I don't know, this video could be up for a while. We might already be on ETH2, but right now at the time of this recording, we're on ETH1, and ETH2 is being worked on, and they are getting people to stake and all that stuff right now. So, what are the main differences between Ethereum and Bitcoin? Well, like the big thing I said, this is designed for decentralized applications. So, with Ethereum comes a Turing-complete environment, often called the EVM or the Ethereum Virtual Machine. And with this, you can build what are known as smart contracts. So, smart contracts power decentralized applications. So now, within this blockchain, we can build programs. And now within a program, we can do a lot of stuff, and we can,
even create software with bugs. For example, we could make an infinite loop, or we could do something that tries to break the blockchain. So because of this, there is a system tied in with these applications where every single action requires some gas. So gas, essentially just fees. We're going to use a little bit of Ethereum for every single action we do inside of a smart contract. This is all totaled up, and then when that transaction occurs, there is a gas fee. Now this gas fee, where does it go? Well, it actually goes to the Ethereum miners. So all across the world, we have Ethereum nodes, and all these nodes are connected to one another through the blockchain. I'm not going to draw all the lines and stuff, but essentially we have a network, and when a smart contract is executed, the gas goes to whatever node confirms those transactions. So it's similar to the fees in the Bitcoin transactions, but instead it's gas, and it's tied to how much operation is done inside of the smart contract. So because of this, the fee of transacting on Ethereum depends on what exactly is going on. So for example, I can send Ethereum from one wallet to another, and that's just going to cost a little bit of gas. Or I could do something a little bit more complicated. Maybe it's minting an NFT. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but that's going to cost a lot more gas. So the more complex the operation, the more gas it's going to cost. This is basically a bidding system. So if you want your transactions to go through faster and not be delayed, if you're trying to take part in something and it's very time sensitive, you can basically say, hey, I'm willing to pay premium gas. And a lot of the wallets out there will give you this option. And in that situation, you're going to pay higher gas rates, but your transaction is going to be added into the next block to be added to the blockchain a lot faster. Or what you could do is say, hey, I'm not very rushed, okay? This can be slow, and you can pay less gas, and this means your transaction might not go through right away, but it will go through once we have a node willing to accept that lower gas. So gas is not a constant, right? It's like it goes up and down over time based on what's going on in the market, the time of day, and everything like that. So if you pay less gas, eventually your transaction is going to go through, and because you're patient, you saved a little bit of money. But for those high pressure, high time sensitive transactions, you're going to be paying extra gas. Or you can just say normal gas, like average, and that's what's going to happen by default, but you're often given options to customize it. Now, because this blockchain is designed for developers to be able to build on top of the blockchain, lots of people out there have introduced new cryptocurrencies built on top of the Ethereum network. And these cryptocurrencies are known as tokens. So it's like just a normal cryptocurrency, but it's built on top of Ethereum. They're going to have their own prices, and they're going to power their own software. So there are tons and tons of tokens out there, and these tokens follow a standard known as ERC20. Now, eventually you're going to hear about NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, and this is another set of tokens, and these follow the ERC 721 standard. So what's the difference between a token and a non-fungible token? Or what you could say fungible and non-fungible. Well, something that is fungible means one can be replaced with the other, and it doesn't make a difference. So for example, if I have a pound of gold and a pound of gold, well, you can swap these and it doesn't really make much of a difference. However, if I had a cat and another cat, well, these cats aren't going to be exactly the same. They're unique. And when things are unique, but they're in the same classification, they're said to be non-fungible. Now, I use the example of cats because there's a really popular NFT known as CryptoKitties. So in those, they're literal digital kitties that can be used in the CryptoKitty game, and each one is unique. You can't swap one for the other because they are different. So these normal tokens, they're just cryptocurrencies that each have a price, and you can have a certain amount of them, and it works great. The NFTs are unique, so this is where digital art, in-game items for video games, Even things such as tickets or events, access to events in real life, can be minted as NFTs. Now, at some point in Ethereum's past, there was a bug and the software split into two. So we have Ethereum Classic and then we just have Ethereum, which is what we're talking about right now in this video. I'm not really talking about Ethereum Classic in this video, but I just thought it was important to share that it still exists and you can still buy that cryptocurrency. So how do you go about acquiring Ethereum? And actually, I'll be showing you how to work with it a little bit in the next video. I decided to do some hands-on content. But to start with Ethereum, you can buy it from an exchange, such as with Crypto.com. Just throwing that out there, just in case. Once you have that Ethereum, it's probably going to be in a custodial wallet, which means it's managed by Crypto.com or whatever exchange you're working with. From there, you can send it to your own wallet that is self-managed. An example of this would be the Crypto.com DeFi wallet app, or the Trust wallet app on your phone, or the Coinbase wallet app, or MetaMask on the computer. There are a lot of different options out there. And then you just send it to that wallet's address. From this self-managed wallet is where I would recommend buying NFTs and interacting with different decentralized applications. That way, everything is tied back to that one seed phrase that you manage, and it's not managed by an exchange. So an example is going to OpenSea and buying a few NFTs. Well, those NFTs are going to be associated with that wallet, so you can display those and only you have access to the ownership of those. Now, a big problem going on with Ethereum is that the gas fees are outrageous, and this is from high demand on the network. But I wanted you to rest assured knowing that there are potential solutions coming, the biggest one being Ethereum 2. That's going to really change the way Ethereum works, and I think gas is going to be a lot lower. Transactions are going to go through a lot easier. So overall total transactions per second is going to go up. There's also layer 2 solutions, which you can research these if you want. I'm not going to dive into them real deep in this video, but these are basically built a layer on top of Ethereum that will do some stuff off-chain and then send back the final result to the Ethereum network. This allows for more processing to be done off of that blockchain, which can save gas fees and make things a lot faster. So those are two different things you can look into, but don't be discouraged when you go to buy an NFT and it's like $60 or $100 to buy it. Just be patient because I think some of those problems will resolve over time. But in the meantime, there are a lot of other networks competing for the Ethereum space and introducing their own systems, their own NFT platforms. So there are other networks you can look into if you don't want to pay those fees and you're unwilling to wait for Ethereum 2. So this is where Binance Smart Chain really jumped in and stole a lot of attention, but this is a more centralized network and it's something we're going to talk about a little bit more in an upcoming video. In the meantime, let's go into the next video, learn a little bit about how to start working with Ethereum, and that'll be fun, so I'll see you there. Peace out.
Hey everyone, welcome to your hands-on guide to Ethereum. Be sure to check out the previous videos where we talked about the concepts behind Ethereum and blockchain, but in this one we're just going to get some experience, taking a look at the Ethereum website, some other cool resources, and how to get started actually using Ethereum. To jump in, this is the Ethereum website. It's pretty cool. And you can go in here and you can get some good resources such as what wallet to use, how to get Ethereum, what decentralized applications to use, and then how to start programming with Ethereum, which I would say are the main 4 things you need to know with Ethereum. So first thing with the wallet, there are a ton of different options. You can choose what features and what you need to do with it. Now, I'm just going to suggest one wallet, which is the Trust wallet on your mobile device. Now, another really big one you should know about is MetaMask. And that's what I have here, this little fox right here. And you can see I have an Ethereum balance right here. So an idea I'm going to suggest is you can actually create a wallet on either one of these, either the Trust wallet or MetaMask, and you'll get a seed phrase. And when you get the seed phrase, you want to write it down. This is just a bunch of words. Write that down, save it, don't show it to anybody, but you can actually log in essentially to that same seed phrase using MetaMask. So basically you can share the balance across 2 different applications and it's all tied to the same blockchain, but that just might be a little bit easier for organization. But it also introduces 2 areas you have to protect because now people can basically access your funds on your computer and on your mobile device. So you just want to be very careful. And this is essentially what I do just for practicing and experimenting, but I don't store tons of money on any of these wallets, especially a mobile wallet. If I could just lose my phone or something, that's really risky to me. So I suggest the Trust Wallet on your mobile device because it's going to come in handy for the next hands-on video, but you don't really need that right yet, and you can use the same seed phrase. So we'll actually just start with MetaMask. So go ahead, download MetaMask. I'll show you where to get it. Go to metamask.io, hit download, and install MetaMask for Chrome. It also supports these other browsers as well if you don't use Chrome. Now, when you open MetaMask for the first time, you have the option to create a new wallet or import a wallet seed phrase. Just create a new wallet if you don't already have one, and then all of your funds are going to show up here and the different tokens that are available. Now, you can get your address to send funds to it by clicking these three little dots and going to account details. You can scan that QR code or use this address starting with 0x. So for example, I can copy this. And now to get Ethereum, you'll want to use an exchange. Now for this, I recommend Crypto.com, and I'm not just saying that because they sponsored this series, but they give you instant access to your funds. When you sign up, you can buy Ethereum with a debit card and then withdraw that immediately. So on the app, I'm not going to record and show you it. Just real quick, you just say transfer and then withdraw whatever cryptocurrency you want, and then an external wallet, which is where you're going to add that address. So you can paste that address in, not too bad. There are other exchanges out there. So for example, you could use Binance. That's another popular one that I use. This one's a little bit easier to show on the computer where I can just paste in that Ethereum address and then submit for that withdrawal. Now I wanted to show you this really cool visualization. So if this right hand side is Bitcoin and each one of these little people are transactions, you'll basically see how these transactions get processed. On the left-hand side, we have Ethereum, and the different, see how people are going into different carts? That's depending on how much gas they're willing to pay. So if you want to pay a lot of gas, you can get added to that first cart. Otherwise, you can just wait in the slower carts and then move up. And you'll notice also numerous different coins on the left here, and that's because Ethereum provides the blockchain for numerous technologies, which we talked about in the previous episode. So that's just a little cool visualization I wanted to show you. And now let's get back to what we were talking about, which is how to actually use Ethereum. So one of the most popular apps you're going to want to familiarize yourself with is Uniswap. So we're currently on Uniswap v2, but v3 is on its way. So by the time you watch this, maybe v3 will be out. But basically you click use Uniswap, and then you can basically swap your Ethereum or any of these other tokens for another token on the same blockchain. So for example, we can get Enjin. And then you could say 1 Ethereum, and that'll give you 1,033 Enjin. Then all you have to do is connect your wallet, select MetaMask, confirm, connect, and then you can work on these transactions. Now, when you do this, there's going to be some fees. So if we say 0.05 just to get an amount I actually have, 0.01, you can hit swap. And there is a small liquidity provider fee. So basically the people that provide the tokens for the swap get a benefit. So we can hit confirm swap, and this will actually bring up MetaMask, and it will show the transaction, but it will also include a gas fee here. So this gas fee doesn't go to the liquidity providers, it goes to the Ethereum miners. So basically you're going to be paying $28.66 just for this transaction to go through. So let me just reject this real quick. If we decided to, instead of doing 0.01, we decided 0.001 swap, confirm swap, you'll notice here that the gas is exactly the same. In this situation, gas is like almost 100% of the transaction. So the more Ethereum, or the larger the transaction, the better when it comes to saving money on gas, because it's a smaller percentage of the total transaction. So that is just an introduction. Once you swap this, which I don't really feel like paying $30 for that much, but that's going to go in your MetaMask wallet, and you'll be able to add and collect tokens here. Now, what about NFTs? Real quick, I'll show you my collection. Oh yeah, don't worry about those. What I was actually looking for was my public collection, which are these ones right here, which I have purchased. So we have 2 domains, calebcurry.crypto and coinbreakthrough.crypto, which is my other YouTube channel if you're interested in more cryptocurrency content. My internet's hardly working, so this one's not loading. And there we go, it finally loaded. So that's just a quick introduction to everything with the Ethereum network. There's a lot to learn, and this is just getting started, but I think it's a pretty good intro. If you enjoyed the content, please be sure to subscribe and check out the next video because we're going to be talking about Binance, specifically the Binance coin, BNB. So check it out. Hey, what's up everyone? In this episode, we're going to be talking about the Binance Smart Chain, a complete beginner introduction. Ideally, you watch some of the videos earlier in this playlist so you have that foundation of Bitcoin and Ethereum. But basically, long story short, some dude or some company invented Bitcoin. Bitcoin was then forked and Ethereum was born. And then later down the road, Ethereum was forked and the Binance Smart Chain was born. So Binance Smart Chain, BSC, you often hear it. This is a network that can very well compete with Ethereum, but it has some key changes, and that is, one, it's really fast with transactions. So the transaction throughput is very quick. Now this chain is competing with Ethereum right now, and the price of BNB, the coin of this network, is going up very quickly. What essentially is this? Well, we have Binance. And Binance is a company behind Binance the exchange as well as Binance.us. And they decided, hey, we want to create a chain for decentralized finance, similar to Ethereum, but we want those fees to be very, very low. So to do this, we can actually centralize the network, and that'll allow the transactions per second to be much higher with much lower fees. So it's centralized, decentralized finance, which just sounds weird, but just go with it for a little bit. Basically, Binance and the Binance Smart Chain is allowing these blockchain apps to be built without the extreme fees of Ethereum. Yeah, there is the centralization issue with the Binance Smart Chain, but some people aren't really concerned with that, and the apps being built on the Binance Smart Chain are still very innovative and are contributing to this whole blockchain system. So over time, I think all these issues are kind of going to iron themselves out, but apps might be built on the Binance Smart Chain, ported over to some more decentralized chains, or the Binance Smart Chain will become more decentralized over time once some of the challenges of transactions per second are improved. So I don't really know what the future holds for this. All I know is that as soon as Binance Smart Chain came out, it exploded and everybody started creating apps and their new tokens on the Binance Smart Chain. So all of the apps that are on Ethereum, there's often a Binance Smart Chain equivalent. For example, Uniswap on Ethereum to swap different tokens. There's PancakeSwap on Binance Smart Chain. The biggest challenge with the Binance Smart Chain is how do you actually get started with it? Because you need BNB, which means you ultimately need money, but let's say you have BNB, and you want to start working with these Binance Smart Chain apps and tokens, you're going to probably use PancakeSwap. But a big challenge is you can't just use BNB that you get from an exchange. That's because BNB originally was on the Ethereum blockchain. So what that means is there's actually multiple kinds of BNB. So what you need to do is you need to go from BNB on the exchange over to BEP20 BNB, or what you might just hear as BSC BNB. Basically BNB on the Binance Smart Chain. So if you're using Binance.com, if you're not from America and you're on the Binance exchange, you might be given the option to withdraw your BNB as BEP20. Me, in America, when I try to withdraw BNB, I'm only given the option BEP2, which is not quite what we want. So to get around this, there's a few different things you can do, and one solution right now is to use a certain wallet that will allow you to do this exchange. So basically, the entire process looks like this. Binance.us, the exchange, you buy it there, Or, you could also buy it on any of the other exchanges, such as Crypto.com or Coinbase or whatever it might be. You just need to get BNB. Then you can send this to a wallet on your phone called the Trust Wallet. And in here, there's a decentralized exchange where you can swap from the original BNB to Binance Smart Chain BNB. And then that's going to give you that final result, Binance Smart Chain BNB. You can then use this BNB for all of the different apps, and you can swap for different tokens through something like PancakeSwap. So ideally, in the next few months or next year or really soon, we can basically skip this process where we don't need that decentralized exchange, and we just automatically have Binance Smart Chain BNB because it's an option when we withdraw from Binance.us. So that's what we want. So we want it to give us the option to withdraw BEP20. Not quite there yet, but I could see that happening really soon because there was announcements that is how it works on Binance.com. And, Binance.us kind of follows Binance.com just a little bit slower. So I think that'll happen soon. So I thought I'd have a lot more for this video, but that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted to talk about. So what we'll do is in the next video, we'll get some hands-on experience with this, and it'll be great. Thank you for watching, stay tuned, and let me know what other networks or topics you want me to talk about in this blockchain series. Welcome back to your blockchain series. This episode, we're going to get hands-on with the Binance Smart Chain with just a very simple overview of how to get started. Now, if you want the theory behind the Binance Smart Chain and the other blockchain stuff, then check out the rest of the videos in this playlist. So I'm going to be using my mobile device, and right now I'm on the Crypto.com app. You can use other exchanges, of course, and we'll say transfer and withdraw BNB. Now for this, you can use an external wallet. Here is an example of where I withdrew some BNB to this address that starts with BNB 1K, blah, 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 and so forth. So this is what you're most likely going to see when you withdraw BNB. So I recommend you go with the Trust Wallet here, and you can see I'm already receiving BNB here, and my address is BNB 1K, so you can see it matches. So when you sign into Trust for the first time, I would consider using the same seed phrase as MetaMask so that they are connected and you don't have to think about it too much. But it's up to you if you want to do that. But I recommend Trust for this one because there's an important step, which is getting your BNB to Smart Chain BNB. So if we go back to our wallet, you can see there is BNB and then there is Smart Chain BNB. And we can exchange using this DEX at the bottom where we go from BNB to Smart Chain BNB. So up here we can set an amount such as 0.05, like I'm just using it as an example. And that's going to give you the same amount in Smart Chain BNB. And we hit swap. And you can see there is a small network fee, so make sure the amount you're transferring is worth that network fee. But $2, that's not too bad. Once you have the Smart Chain BNB, you can start using it for Binance Smart Chain apps. For example, PancakeSwap, and in here you can connect your wallet and use your Trust Wallet or MetaMask. Within MetaMask, you can add Binance Smart Chain on here. And here's where you can swap between different cryptocurrencies on the Binance Smart Chain, but you can also do something similar inside of the Trust Wallet. So you can see I have this browser down at the bottom and I can open up PancakeSwap, and there we have the option to do some swaps. Now to use that browser inside of the Trust Wallet, you might need to take this extra step of opening Safari and typing in trust://browser enable, and that is going to open Trust and enable the browser for you. And then you can just do PancakeSwap from here. Now PancakeSwap is going to be much cheaper than something like Uniswap on the Ethereum network, because remember on the Binance Smart Chain, fees are much lower. So we can go in here and swap from BNB. So then you can go in here, you can configure slippage, which I had it set to a different amount. You probably want it like 0.5%, and then you can swap. And here you'll see some of the fees. Confirm swap, that's going to confirm it and show the actual network fee, and you can see it's only 48 cents, which is significantly cheaper than on the Ethereum network. So we'll go ahead and send that. I'll show you the entire process. Transaction submitted, and you can view it on Binance Smart Chain Scan, or you can just go back, check your wallet, and if you ever need to add something on here, you can hit these little dots up in the top corner, search for that network, Filecoin, turn that on, and you might just need to wait for that transaction to be confirmed for the funds to show up. All right, and it says smart contract call executed, and it actually showed up here under Binance Peg Filecoin. So I have 0.037. So there's like a divide here because some of these coins exist on Binance, but they're not originally on Binance. So they were forked from Ethereum or pegged to the original coin, which you can research a little bit more on that as well. But Filecoin, obviously, you want the Binance Peg Filecoin and not the original Filecoin. Yeah, that's just kind of like a rough introduction. Hopefully that was helpful. There's probably a million more things I could cover. Just wanted to give an intro. So if you enjoyed the content, please be sure to subscribe. Stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. Bye.